Hi, I'm Houston Haynes, and we're here at my studio to show how the SmartAV Tango works as a front end to Steinberg's Cubase. We're going to build a little bit on our Nuendo series of videos and go over some of the transport controls again, as well as show some additional functions with the zoom controls and other navigational tools that are accessed through the SmartAV Tango's edit panels.
To recap, we'll start with the transport controls, which are on the right-hand side of the console. The first row of buttons above the jog wheel are hardwired to direct transport control: record, fast forward, play and stop, fast rewind, and loop. The second row is more interesting because the function can change with the use of the shift button, and each button can be programmed. By default, they are set to right locator, next marker, previous marker, nudge right, nudge left, and left locator. When the shift button is engaged, the marker buttons go from chasing the left and right locator to setting the left and right locator. The nudge buttons, when activated with the shift key, set the two different types of markers. The left nudge button sets an individual marker, and the right nudge button sets a cycle marker to the currently selected locator range. The previous marker button becomes a zoom to locators key, and the next marker button selects all events that fall within the locator range. This has the effect of selecting all tracks that have events in that range, which can be useful in a variety of contexts. Note that the editing preference for track selection follows event selection must be active for this function to work. You still have access to all of these commands on the Tango's edit panels and of course through menus in Cubase and Nuendo. But having these common controls literally right under your fingertips is very efficient. And of course, you can further tailor these buttons by setting your own remote commands to suit your workflow. Now we'll open the Transport Edit panel to review the functions that are laid out there. The first few rows are dedicated to markers, both for setting and chasing both individual and loop markers. Note that you have both sets of commands for cycle markers to simply locate to them and to recall a cycle marker, which also sets the locators to that section on the timeline. You also have a row of commands that allow you to take full advantage of pre- and post-roll, as well as groups of paired functions that enable you to move around the project at will. The shuttle commands offer the ability to move up and down the timeline while listening to your mix. Most times I also activate the dim control on my monitor before shuttling around the project. Having everything at your fingertips makes it intuitive and keeps the creative juices flowing. You may also notice that along the lower left edge and along the bottom of each edit panel is the same configuration of virtual controls. This is to provide consistency from panel to access the most commonly used functions. You may also notice that there are buttons here that you may not need, such as the 9-pin device button. All you have to do is simply reprogram and relabel the button to suit your needs and you're off and running. The transport panel button is in the lower left corner and is used to quickly pull up and then hide the transport panel when accessing features that don't have a remote command, such as setting the appropriate record mode or punch in and punch out length. Once you have reviewed your settings, simply tap the transport panel button again and the transport disappears from view. This is another nice side benefit of the SmartAV Tango. Aside from providing a comprehensive mixer view that allows you to keep the Cubase and Nuendo mixer closed most of the time, the edit panels also give you instant access to the controls and editors and allows you to keep the project space uncluttered and maximize the visual workspace. If we skip over to the Zoom Edit panel, you'll see a more sparse command set, but don't let that fool you. This is really powerful stuff. You'll note that the standard zoom in and out is there, but there are also a host of other functions that are really useful. Once you've set your locators, you can use the select and loop to highlight all of the events that fall within the left and right markers. This includes events that run outside the locator boundaries. This is useful because you can now use zoom to locators to zero in on what you've selected, or use zoom to selection to view the entire range of events to include those that start before and or finish after the locators. As an example, in film mixing, you might want to use this to review events that might fall outside of the scene boundary that was set by a cycle marker. The same goes for a piece of music that might have a part that runs long or could give you an indication on the amount of pre-roll you should set to lead into your punch. Zoom Tracks Exclusive, when used in conjunction with Select and Loop, allows you to focus on the tracks with events that fall within your set locators. You can also take advantage of the Zoom presets, modify your own settings in Cubase and Nuendo, and call it up instantly from the Tango. The empty edit panel locations can be populated with other remote commands, as well as your own project logical editor or macro presets. That's beyond the scope of this introduction, but it should give you the general idea. As you can see, the Tango lets you fly around your project with easy and intuitive controls, and the deep integration with Cubase and Nuendo makes for an unbeatable combination. Check out the rest of our video series as well as product updates and the latest information on smartav.net. Thanks for watching.
Hi, my name is Houston Haynes and we're here in my studio to show how the SmartAV Tango works as a front end to Steinberg's Cubase. In this video, we're going to focus on track level functions, the active channel area, as well as the rotary encoders, which offer a really nice hardware front end to Cubase.
One of the most prominent features of the Tango is the array of 16 rotary encoders on the right side of the touchscreen area. They not only continuously turn, but they also have push-button activation that works differently depending upon the control's context. Also notice the 8 rotary encoders within each fader section. They also have the same function and behavior, and often interact with the encoders to the right, chasing to the selected control for the 8 channels that are selected within the fader area. On the right-hand side of the touchscreen area next to the encoder section is the active channel. Here you'll see detailed information for the track that's currently selected in the fader bank. At the bottom is the active display, something that is very useful in a variety of contexts. The active display area lets you drill into your inserts, dynamics, EQ, sends, and output assignments. Simply touch the respective area on the touchscreen for a particular channel, and the active display gives you a context for working in that area in detail. You will also see the context of the rotary encoders change as the active section of a particular channel changes. The 8 rotary encoders along the fader section will also chase to the last touched encoder on the right-hand side of the screen, giving you instant access to the same active parameter across all channels that are loaded in the fader section. The active controls located just below the touchscreen area's active display provides a motorized pot and fine control encoder, as well as a push button for activating controls. All of these areas work together to provide a consistent hardware interface to Cubase and Nuendo, both its built-in functions and of course internal and third-party plugins. For dialing in equalizer settings, Tango provides 2 views that correspond to the physical encoders. Once you activate the equalizer section of a channel, you can toggle the active encoders button on the lower left-hand side of the touchscreen to switch the EQ view. Notice that the encoder for the gain control on each section also acts as a push-button switch to turn the EQ section on and off. When the active encoder setting shows the advanced EQ layout, you can also touch the screen area to perform the same function. There's still another location where you can activate an EQ section, and that's the active controls area. The push button acts as a switch for the currently selected EQ. You may also notice the motorized pot will chase to the setting of the currently selected control. The fine control in the active controls area is a handy way to dial in a more specific value for a parameter. You can also perform this function in certain situations by pressing the relevant encoder. You'll see a pair of arrows that indicates control in fine adjustment mode, and the parameter will increment in smaller values. Here, the frequency setting switches from incrementing by every 100 Hz to a fine value of every 10 Hz. And when the EQ shows the advanced layout, the push button action on the third encoder on each section switches between the EQ band type and Q factor. The push button action on the encoders in the fader section toggles the bypass of the entire EQ section, which is great for quickly auditioning your changes. Another example of how the encoders and active display are put to good use is in the output section. Touch the output of any track in the fader bank and you notice that the active channel area switches to show groups, FX channels, and mix buses that are available. From here you can select the output routing of the channel. The active display area is also now an active screen for setting the pan of the track, which is kind of boring for stereo tracks, but that all changes when you've routed to a 5.1 bus. Simply draw the surround pattern with your finger, and the output is routed to the surround bus per the surround panner settings in Nuendo. This is another good time to have the mixer available to modify your surround panner settings. This is when the Tango becomes a really interesting, fun, and intuitive way of working with your tracks. Once you get a feel for how this all comes together so quickly, you'll wonder how you ever got along without it. Well, we've run out of time again. I'll show some other features using the Tango's hardware controls in the next chapter. And don't forget to check out the latest information, product updates, and other online videos at smartav.net. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Houston Haynes. We're here at my studio to show how the SmartAV Tango works as a front end to Steinberg's Cubase. We're going to build on what we've already shown in the Cubase Chapter 2 video and actually build on that to show the care and feeding of send and insert effects.
The most direct way to select a plugin is to go to the Insert section of a track and go into the active channel area and select the desired slot where you're going to drop in the plugin. Next, select the Change Plugin button and you'll see an entire list of VST plugins update. If you have more plugins that can be displayed on one panel, subsequent plugin lists will be generated, and you can page through them and find the desired plugin. Simply touch the name of the plugin and then press Change. The plugin will load, and you'll notice the 16 encoders on the right of the Tango will show all of the available VST parameters for that plugin. Also, notice that the plugin might open up over your workspace when it's initially loaded. This is controlled by a preference under VST, Plugins, Open Effect Editor after loading it. Having a VST open by default is a matter of personal taste. It can be helpful to have a plugin chase the position of the change that you make in the Tango's front panel. Once you've dialed in your settings, you can press the window button on the active control area and close the plugin. Anytime you want to go back to view the plugin, this is a quick and easy way to pull up the desired insert. In many cases, a plugin will have more than 16 parameters, at which point you'll use the page navigation to find the desired parameter to set or automate. Notice that certain parameters, such as bypass and effect on-off, operate on the turn of the right-hand encoders. This can sometimes create timing problems when automating, so instead of using the turn pot, go to the active controls area and use the insert parameter button to switch the value cleanly. The setup of sends is not much more difficult than instantiating an insert on an audio track. Essentially, it means setting up an FX channel and of course placing at least one insert. Once that's done, you can route your existing tracks to it. Or, if you have planned ahead and created your FX channels first, you can then set the preference under VST for Connect Sends automatically for each newly created channel. Then, when you create your channel, the sends will be auto-instantiated. From there, all you have to do is dial into the send section of the channel, press the rotary encoder to turn it on, and then set the send level. You'll also notice that the 8 rotary encoders in the fader section will chase to the selected send, which makes it a snap to move down the line and set the send levels for tracks in groups of 8 at a time. The power and utility of ergonomic spreads also comes into play here, where you can quickly set levels for channels that aren't side by side of the mixer, but the Tango lets you rearrange them in any order to get an apples-to-apples view across your work. If you're creating the FX channel after you've laid out your audio channels, things get a little bit more involved, but can be quickly dealt with a bit of edit panel navigation and a quick trip to the Cubase mixer. After you've created your FX channel, open the mixer with the extended section showing, then select View Sends. From there you can move down the line and select the appropriate send for each track. Once that is complete, then you can close the mixer and use the rotary encoders on the Tango to set the levels. In most cases, I use a project template that already has 8 FX channels set. With the Connect Sends parameter, the sends are already populated in any audio track that I might create afterward. It's certainly simpler if I start that way. If I end up needing fewer sends, then I delete the FX channels from a project when I'm near the final version. This concludes our introduction to plugin control with the Tango. We hope you got something from our whirlwind tour of insert and send management in Cubase. Don't forget that all of these examples also apply to Nuendo. There are quite a few things you can do on the host side to speed up the workflow, but we'll save that for some one-shot videos that you'll find on SmartAV.net. Check out the website for updates and more information, and thanks for watching.